Imagine standing inside a packed wood-paneled courtroom in 1897. The room is dead silent. A mother stands at the witness stand, points a trembling finger at the defendant, and tells the jury that a horrific murder was committed. Standard true crime stuff, right? Except for one detail. The mother didn't witness the crime. Neither did anyone else alive. The star witness for the prosecution was a ghost. Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a case that defies legal logic. This is the story of Zona Heaster, yet a young woman from Greenbrier County, West Virginia, whose sudden death was ruled an accident. It would have stayed that way forever if Zona hadn't allegedly returned from the grave to name her killer. But was it truly a paranormal visitation? Or a brilliant, desperate trick played by a mother who knew the truth? Let's unpack the mystery. Our story begins in late 1896. Zona Heaster, who went by Zona, was a bright, independent young woman living in a deeply traditional, tight-knit mountain community. Enter Erasmus Stribling Trout, Shue. Most people just called him Trout. Trout Shue was a drifter who had just arrived in town to work as a blacksmith. He was tall, handsome, and carried an intense energy that immediately drew Zona in. Within just a few weeks of meeting, Trout and Zona were married. But not everyone was celebrating. Zona's mother, Mary Jane Heaster, despised Trout from the moment she laid eyes on him. She felt something dark lurking beneath his charming exterior. In a small town, a mother's intuition is a powerful thing, but Zona was blinded by love. The newlyweds moved into a small, isolated two-story house. The honeymoon phase didn't just end, it vanished. Neighbors started noticing a shift. Zona became quiet and withdrawn. Trout's charming mask began to slip, revealing a volatile temper. But before anyone could intervene, disaster struck. On January 23rd, 1897th, only 3 months after their wedding, Trout sent a local young boy named Andy Jones to the house on an errand. When Andy walked through the front door, he found Zona lying at the foot of the stairs. She was dead. Terrified, the boy ran home to tell his mother, who summoned the local physician and coroner, Dr. George Knapp. But by the time Dr. Knapp arrived an hour later, something highly unusual had happened. Trout Shue had already moved his wife's body upstairs to the bedroom. He had washed her, dressed her in a high-necked, stiff-collared dress, and laid her out on the bed. This was completely counter to custom. Traditionally, local women prepared bodies for burial, not the grieving husband. As Dr. Knapp began his medical examination, Trout snapped. He paced the room like a caged animal, weeping hysterically and cradling his dead wife's head. Every time Dr. Knapp tried to examine Zona's neck or head, Trout became aggressive. Feeling threatened and wanting to defuse the situation, Dr. Knapp made a fatal mistake. He stopped the exam. He wrote down the cause of death as everlasting faint, which was basically an old-fashioned term for heart failure, and later changed it to childbirth complications, despite no evidence that Zona was pregnant. At the funeral, Trout's behavior went from grieving to bizarre. He insisted on placing a heavy, bright yellow scarf around Zona's neck, claiming it was her favorite. He propped her head up with a large pillow on one side and a rolled-up sheet on the other. Everyone thought he was just unhinged by grief. Everyone except Mary Jane Heaster. When the funeral ended, Mary Jane walked up to the casket, ripped the yellow veil off her daughter's body, and tried to hand it back to Trout. He refused it. Mary Jane took the veil home. When she washed it, she noticed the water turned a strange, bloody red, and the veil smelled of decay. To Mary Jane, this wasn't a natural death. It was murder. But she had zero proof. For 4 straight nights, Mary Jane Heaster knelt by her bed and prayed. She prayed for Zona to come back and tell her exactly what happened in that house. And on the 4th night, her prayers were answered. According to Mary Jane, a bright light filled her bedroom. The air turned ice cold, and the spirit of Zona appeared. The ghost didn't look peaceful. She looked exactly as she had in the casket, but her head was tilted at an impossible, unnatural angle. Over the course of those 4 nights, the spirit of Zona allegedly spoke to her mother. She revealed that Trout was a cruel, abusive man. She said that on the night she died, Trout flew into a rage because he thought she hadn't cooked enough meat for dinner. In his fury, he attacked her, violently snapping her neck. To prove it, the spirit of Zona supposedly turned her head completely around until it faced backward. Now, let's look at this pragmatically. In 1897, if you go to the police and say, "Hey, a ghost told me my son-in-law is a murderer," they're going to lock you up in an asylum. But Mary Jane was relentless. She marched straight to the local prosecutor, John Alfred Preston. Preston was skeptical, obviously, but Mary Jane was incredibly detailed. She didn't just say, "My daughter was killed." She gave specific anatomical details that had never been made public. Details about the state of Zona's neck. Intrigued by Mary Jane's absolute conviction, Preston began doing some digging into Trout Shue's past, and what he found sent chills down his spine. It turned out Trout Shue wasn't just a quirky blacksmith. He was a monster. This was his 3rd marriage. His first wife had divorced him while he was in prison for stealing a horse. His second wife had died under incredibly mysterious circumstances, falling and hitting her head on a rock while Trout was nearby. Armed with this terrifying new pattern of behavior, Prosecutor Preston ordered Zona's body to be exhumed for a proper autopsy. On February 22nd, 1897, a medical team opened Zona's coffin. Trout Shue was forced to attend. The autopsy revealed the horrific truth. Zona's neck had been broken. The windpipe was crushed, and the first and second vertebrae of her spine were completely severed. There were clear fingerprints on her throat. She had been strangled to death. Trout Shue was immediately arrested and put on trial for first-degree murder. The trial was a media sensation. The prosecutor actually tried to avoid bringing up the ghost story, fearing the jury would think they were insane. But Trout Shue's defense attorney made a catastrophic tactical error. Thinking he could make Mary Jane look ridiculous and untrustworthy, the defense attorney called her to the stand and grilled her relentlessly about her paranormal visions. He expected her to crack. Instead, Mary Jane stood her ground. She described the ghost's visits with such fierce, unwavering consistency and raw maternal grief that the jury didn't laugh. They believed her. More importantly, her ghostly description perfectly matched the exact spinal injuries found during the autopsy. injuries Mary Jane could not have legally known about. After only an hour of deliberation, the jury found Trout Shue guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he died 3 years later from an epidemic. Today, a historical marker stands in Greenbrier County honoring Zona. It is the only state marker in America that mentions a ghost helping to track down a murderer. So, what really happened? Was Mary Jane actually visited by her daughter's spirit? Or was she a brilliant, grieving mother who noticed the bruising on her daughter's neck at the funeral, put the pieces of the puzzle together, and invented the ghost story because she knew it was the only way the deeply religious, superstitious townspeople would listen to her? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did the ghost bring justice? Or did a mother's genius catch a killer? Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more true crime mysteries, and we'll see you in the next one.